Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Selby series. We've seen almost the entire district. All we've got left is the town of Selby itself. Okay, so we've parked the car. Decent little tariff actually, £3 for all day. We're parked till 6 o'clock. Oh, Nikki likes that. We're parked until 6 o'clock. Plenty of time to do what we need to do here in Selby. Our start point is the Abbey, and we're just making our way across to it. It's over there between these shops. So let's go and find it. This Selby episode is sponsored by Past Days, a family history blog by June Terrington. You'll find a link in the description. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. The 74th and final parish of the Selby district is the town of Selby itself. This is a market town located 14 miles south of York on the River Ouse, with a population at the 2011 census of 14,731. The town was historically part of the West Riding of Yorkshire until 1974. It once had a large shipbuilding industry and was an important port on the Selby Canal. The town's origins date from the establishment of a Viking settlement on the banks of the Ouse. It was first mentioned as Sellerton in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle of 779 AD. The modern name Selby is first attested in a Yorkshire charter dated 1030. The name is thought to be a Scandinavian form of Sellerton, meaning sallow tree settlement. Its most prominent feature is its abbey, and whilst the majority of its original buildings no longer stand, the central nave survived, and in 1618 it became the parish church. Selby is expanding to become a larger town. New houses and shops are being built on the present town's outskirts, and its riverfront area has also been revamped with modern housing and flats. This is a bumper episode. It's the last in the largest series I've completed so far, so it's 43 minutes long. That said, it's still a big place, so don't expect to see everything. Let's finish off the district of Selby in style. We begin at the only place we could really, the magnificent Selby Abbey, the biggest and most well-known landmark in the town. The Abbey was the first monastic building established in northern England after the Norman conquest. In existence since 1069, the original Selby Abbey was constructed after a monk, known as Benedict of Auxerre, had a vision where he was called by Saint Germain to build a new monastery at a place called Selby. In his vision, it was said the site of the new monastery would be marked by the presence of 3 swans, and it was here, on the banks of the River Ouse, where he would find them, after first mistaking Selby for Salisbury on his journey from France. For the next 500 years, 35 abbots led the abbey until Henry VIII had his way in 1539. It then fell into ruins, but in the 19th century it was reconstructed. It was further fire damaged in 1906, but today Selby Abbey stands as grand as it ever has. So here on the fence around the side of the abbey, there's something about a cholera and burial ground. And we believe it is this patch of land opposite the abbey. Now Nikki is going to make a little video about this of her own, which may well already be out on the channel. So stay tuned for that if it hasn't come out yet, or if it has, go and watch it. Behind the Abbey are a number of interesting buildings. We drew a blank on this one. It appeared to be related to the Abbey and was endowed by a local family. Although it was empty, it seems this could be hired out. All of these buildings are some of the oldest Selby has. Many of them have changed over the centuries, some significantly, others not, but they're all still in use. For example, one of them here is Abbey Place Clinic. Let's walk into the marketplace now. In doing so, we will pass the George Inn and Hotel. This is a gorgeous 15th century coaching inn where in the past, horse-drawn coaches used to change horses on the way to their destinations. The marketplace is adorned with a market cross, which dates from the 18th century. 1775 or 1790 are two different quoted dates for this. This is severely eroded thanks to weathering, but it's a Grade 2 listed structure and another Selby icon. Okay, straight over the road from the marketplace and we're into these fabulous little lanes. I love these. These are fantastic. There are plenty of these in Selby town centre. The lanes are all part of the Market Cross shopping centre, and James Street, which runs south through it, is where we find the Abbey Vaults, one of the many pubs in the town. Not surprising, seeing as Tadcaster's breweries are so close by. The Market Cross shopping centre is owned by the Sheffield company Dransfield Properties. It has many retail facilities, including one of Selby's main supermarkets. That would be Morrison's, located at the end of James Street. Opposite Morrison's, there's a school. This is Selby Abbey Church of England Primary School, which since its foundation in 1858 has maintained strong links with Selby Abbey. The present buildings date from 1896, accommodating 380 children. Things relating to the Abbey can be found everywhere. This information plaque on the wall of the Abbey Vaults tells us about the Abbey's 13th century tithe barn, which was close by to here. The wall uses some of its former stones. Okay, back up into the lanes, as I'm going to call this area. Plenty of household names. We've got a Home Bargains here. We've got a Vodafone shop. Got the Works next to me here. There it is. And EE shop, BT shop, all kinds of things. Holland and Barrett even.
Which way?
That way. The next part of the walk takes us along the A19. This is Gowthorpe and it's Selby's main shopping street. It's lined with loads of household names, but equally there are independent businesses too, some of which we checked out later. There's some more notable buildings as well. At number 1 Gowthorpe is Bar Paradise, which was formerly known as both Boardwalk and Treehouse. Before it served revellers though, it was the town's local board office. Next is the Giant Bellflower, the town's Wetherspoons. This is a former furniture store and it was called Everett's. It gets its name thanks to Thomas Johnson, a 17th century herbalist who recorded many examples of the Giant Bellflower on the banks of the River Ouse. And where Gowthorpe meets Brook Street is the Town Hall. This was originally built as a Methodist chapel in 1862 and it's now an award-winning performing arts centre, owned and run by Selby Town Council. Well spotted by Nikki here. There's some kind of monument in this garden at the Town Hall, which we can't get to it.
It looks a bit like a Viking longboat.
A little bit, like the end of it, yeah. Could well be, actually.
Yeah, like a partial Viking longboat.
Obviously.
Can't get in to see where it is, though, can we?
No, because the gates are locked. Never mind. Gowthorpe becomes the A1238 now. Here we pass some houses which were built by Selby's Feoffees in 1822. That's a fact recognised by the stone set above the one in the middle. These are numbers 109 to 119. Here we have Selby's Roman Catholic Church. This is the 1856 built St Mary's, which was designed by Dunn and Hansom of London. Built in the early decorated Gothic style, the arms of the Petrie family appear in its side windows. Over the road is Selby High School. This links back to Selby Grammar School, which was founded in 1908 as an all-girls school. In 1967, this changed to the Selby Grammar School and became co-educational. In 1979, it became a mixed comprehensive school and was renamed Selby High School. The school's houses are named after significant Yorkshire people: Leslie Garrett, David Hockney, James Mason and Michael Palin. So now we've sort of just got out of the town centre, it's got a little bit quieter, and it's going to get quieter still, because now we're heading towards the south of the town centre where there's a lot less activity, but still some interesting landmarks to catch. This is why Armoury Road is so named. At the end of the street is the former armoury and drill hall of the old Selby Rifle Volunteers. Look closely and you'll see the words Selby Rifles over the door. It's now a tile warehouse. Union Lane next, and the clue is in the name. This is where we encounter the Selby Union Workhouse, which was originally erected in 1837. This is the former boardroom, one of the few workhouse buildings to survive to this day. It featured 2 blocks, one for men and one for women. There was also a hospital, which was removed in the 1890s. At the time of its construction, Brook Street, which is to the north of the whole workhouse site, was called Doncaster Road. After a walk along Massey Street, we come to this lovely old building. This is known as the 1811 building, and when it was built, it was used by the Selby College of Further Education. This was its shipbuilding department. So we have lost Hannah and Nikki temporarily because they've gone down to the cemetery, Selby Cemetery, which we saw in the Brayton episode. They will reconvene with me later, and it's interesting that I mentioned the cemetery at this point because obviously this is the 1811 building which I alluded to at that part of the Brayton video. This is the building in question. Very impressive, isn't it? And it's also where there's a parish notice board. You can guarantee there's going to be a card on that in a moment. And put a card on the notice board I did for the 74th and final time. Mark Selby off the list, everyone. The district is complete. Fun fact, every parish in Selby has had one of my cards. I haven't missed a single notice board. New Lane brings us to the Church of St James the Apostle. I couldn't find much about this one, but it's a Grade 2 listed building, and in 2009 it began something called the Edge Community for the benefit of the Flaxley Road estate. This impressive building is Selby's former courthouse. It was closed as part of a programme of cuts to local justice budgets. The town's magistrates heard their final case in March 2013. After being empty for a time, it's now apartments. We go around Selby Abbey Primary School again, and we're heading for Porthome Road. On the way, we pass this open green space, one of a few around the town. Despite the football goals, this one's known as the bowling green. Okay, now we're passing a Methodist church. This is Porthome Church, looking very modern, having some kind of renovation work done to it at the moment, which is just out of sight there behind this little hedge here. On the corner of Porthome Crescent is the Selby District AVS Community House. This is the town's premier conference, event, training and meeting venue. It's also the base of the community transport service. On Porthome Crescent we find Selby's Scrap Store. This is, in essence, a recycling centre. It gathers items from locals which would have otherwise been thrown away and encourages local businesses to put them to use. After walking up Porthome Crescent we emerge onto the A1041 Bawtry Road. Off to the left is the town's relatively small bus station. All those Selby-bound buses we've spoken about before now, well, they all come here. From there we climb up onto Bawtry Road Bridge, which carries the A1041 across the railway line. From here you can clearly see both the bus station and the railway station, where there was a train passing through. So the train station is the next landmark we're heading for, and to get to that we need to go over the railway line and head up towards the River Ouse before coming back on ourselves to the station itself. To get to the railway station we have to walk along the Selby Canal first, and to get to that we pass this highways depot. I couldn't help think, looking at this, that this is the place all those roadworks we love to hate come from. A footpath then runs between that and Selby Fire Station. A pretty small one for the size of the place we're in. This is what's known as a day crude station, and firefighters are on site from 8 AM until 6 PM. It overlooks the Selby Canal. I love how this episode is bringing together all the various parts of the Selby series, which we've talked about since the beginning. We first met the Selby Canal, for example, way back in West Haddlesey, where it joins the River Aire. Halfway along Canal Road towards the Ouse, you'll find this piece of ironwork. This arrowhead-shaped sculpture was made by the sculptor David Main in 1999 and installed as part of regeneration around the Selby Canal in 2000. So this shows you the route of the Selby Canal. We've seen both ends of it now. You might remember the West Haddlesey video where we started somewhere close to the end of the canal at the Aire, and it runs all the way up here to the Ouse, which is about where we are now. We're about here. We're not far away from the Ouse, and that's where we're heading to. And there's a lock to see when we get there. Our walk runs alongside the canal all the way up to the Ouse. On the way we pass this swing bridge which carries Denison Road. This is one of 3 swing bridges, all within an 800-metre radius of each other, and it was originally made of wood. Although there are many platforms provided along the length of the canal for fishing, fishing is not allowed here in Selby Lock Basin, a quiet mooring area which sits just below the lock on the River Ouse. And here is Selby Lock, marking the end of the canal. In 1778, the year the canal was completed, reports claim cannons were fired and the Abbey's bells rang out in celebration as the canal hugely improved Selby's trading position. When Selby was a centre for shipbuilding, Cochrane and Sons Shipyard built vessels and launched them side-on into the River Ouse. They launched their last vessel in 1998. Their cranes still stood until 2001, when strong winds blew them down. Okay, a little bit of a miscalculation from me. I thought there was a footpath down the Ouse there, but there isn't. No big deal, because there is a street which sort of runs parallel to the Ouse, which we can follow instead. It'll still take us to the same place. We're just coming through these rather large flats here. These are all by the side of the Ouse and the canal. Wonder what the guide price is for one of these. Now we're on Ouse Gate, which runs along the river's south bank. Here's the Nelson Inn, a popular local watering hole. What pub tells me beer festivals are or were held here twice a year, usually in May and September. Next it's another pub, this time the Malt Shovel, and this one's got a claim to fame. Its football team, named Malt Shovel FC, which began life in 2014, is currently the highest ranked pub team in England. Just before Ouse Gate runs under the railway line, there's a side street called the Goods Yard, named as such because this used to be just that. I love how these old railway buffers and the line which ended at them have been preserved. There were 6 tracks here at one time. The centre pair terminated inside this building. This is Selby's original railway station, which opened in 1834. This was a notable building because it was Yorkshire's very first railway station. Well, I've got to admit, that's quite the find. I didn't expect to find something as interesting as that along here. I knew I was heading for the railway station, but that was something I did not know about. So, fabulous to find that. Great bit of history for the railway enthusiasts out there. Anyway, speaking of the railway, let's go and find it. The modern station is just a few paces away. Here's a train which I caught just leaving it, crossing the very low Ouse Gate Bridge before making its way over the swing bridge we met back in the Balby episode. Selby Station is a typical Victorian station with plenty of Victorian decor. It dates from 1873, but it was rebuilt in 1891, which was a requirement due to the replacement of the swing bridge over the Ouse at the same time. There was an intermittent station here in 1840 as well, built when the Hull and Selby Railway extended their existing line, which then met with the Leeds and Selby line end on. The 1834 original station became a goods shed at that time. The rail links to it were removed in the 1980s, and the only one that remains is the one where the buffers are that I showed you earlier. And the 1834 station, by the way, is now used as warehousing by Viking Shipping Services Limited. And in a few moments' time, this is where we will reconvene with Nikki and Hannah, who have been down to Selby Cemetery. They're just on their way back now, so we'll wait here for a few minutes and continue the walk when they arrive. They are the back. Did you find anything interesting in the cemetery?
Oh yes, and you're going to spit feathers when you find out what I did. All will be revealed shortly.
If you haven't checked out Nikki's video yet, the link is in the description. Next up we have Selby Park, which is next to the bus station and the railway station. In it, there's a few nice features, like for example this sensory garden. Selby Park runs to some 5 acres in terms of size. It's open all year round and features a number of gardens, a play area for small children, an area with picnic tables and seating, a mini golf course, and this lovely bowls green. Earlier this year, an archaeological survey was carried out in the park to check if there's anything of archaeological value underneath it. This was part of planned improvements to Selby railway station, which will enhance the whole area. The park is also the location of the War Memorial. Interestingly, this one was only unveiled in 1997 because the money originally raised for a memorial in the 1920s was used for Selby's Memorial Hospital. I love this on this bench. Look at this. I remember the Slide of Doom. It was so high up and like a sheer drop at the top. It burnt your bum if you wore short trousers and the sun had warmed it up. Brilliant. Back to Ousegate, and here we've got Selby's other iconic landmark, the Yorkshire Ideal Flour Mill, which is now Westmill Foods. Remember all those flour mills and food related things in Balby? Well, this is Selby's version. The mill was one of the last commercial users of the river for the delivery of its raw materials, and it was built in 1933 on the site of a previous mill dating from the 1890s. It also hides a secret, which we'll talk about shortly. First though, we have this area. This is Church Hill, which is a small area of businesses. The most interesting thing here would be another pub, and that's because of its name. I'm referring, of course, to the Three Swans. Now, if you've got this far into the video, you don't need to be a genius to work out the connection. There's more than just this pub though, which uses the Three Swans, because even the town council's logo and the cricket club's logo features them. Okay, Nikki's leaving us again for the second time, this time to go and do a bit of shopping.
Yep, I've seen quite a few independent shops on Selby High Street, and in particular there's like a bakers and things, and there's a couple of other places I want to have a look at.
So the TVI pounds are going to be spent here. So we'll see you at the end.
Yeah, we'll catch up with that before we wrap up and let you know what I've spent.
I'll meet you at the giant bellflower Wetherspoons, which we saw earlier. Back to the mill, and close to this is the late 14th century Abbots Staith, which is hidden behind the buildings in the foreground. The Staith, which still stands, was a monastic warehouse used by the abbots of Selby to store things like wool for shipping. That'll likely be why the mill stands on a road called the Quay. Next we have a pumping station which manages water levels on Selby Dam at high tides when it can't discharge into the River Ouse as normal. Selby Dam, you'll recall, is the watercourse we met in the Thorpe Willoughby episode. The level of the water here is constantly measured. It reached its highest ever level at this point in January 2021, some 3.97 metres deep. Now, as far as I'm aware, that did not cause a flood. The pumping station played a vital role in protecting Selby during the now infamous 2007 floods. Even if it did flood now, most of the water would end up here on Selby Field. So by coming across this park, what we're doing is we're heading for Selby Town Football Club, which is sort of behind this building over here and over the road that's adjacent to it. So let's go and check them out. That building we were coming around is the Selby Community Centre, which can be hired out by local groups for community events. It features 6 rooms of different sizes with capacities ranging from 6 people to 200 people. Over Scott Road is Richard Street, and welcome to the Fairfax Plant Hire Stadium. This is Selby Town Football Club, founded in 1919. They play in the Northern Counties East League Division 1, English football's 10th tier. The club's traditional rivals are Tadcaster Albion and Goole, the latter of whom they play an annual match with for the right to win the Eric Lawton Cup. They're nicknamed the Robins, and they play in a red and white strip. The stadium sits behind the state-of-the-art Selby Leisure Centre, which is owned and operated by the same company who managed the one in Tadcaster. It features swimming pools, studios, a gym and a relaxation suite. So the final section of the main walk will take us towards Sainsbury's, and we're coming alongside the park which we've just walked across a few moments ago. There's a pond there. You wouldn't believe it, but there's a pond there, and it's all overgrown. I've just passed a gentleman who was going the other way, who was talking to somebody about this pond and saying it's quite terrible how it's been left to be all overgrown now. Hopefully that will be restored to its usual glory soon. So this is Abbey Walk, which is a large shopping centre to the north of the traditional town centre, although it's pretty easy to walk between the two. There's a large Sainsbury's down here, along with a few other household names. Abbey Walk is a modern addition to Selby. It was built in 1998, and the scheme boasts the best configured retail units in the town, with modern rectangular floor plans. It's one of the busiest areas of the town too. This backs onto Micklegate, where there's a traditional town square, flanked by much older Victorian shops and pubs. Once again, there's ample car parking. The whole area is overlooked by the mill we talked about earlier. Oh, and check this out. On the side of the wedding rooms is a blue plaque about David Foster. He was a local businessman and inventor who lived right here. In 1890, he devised and patented the first table tennis equipment. Well, who would have thought that Selby had a connection to the sport of table tennis? Certainly not me. Anyway, this is the Griffin Inn, which you'll also find along here, and this is just a few paces away from the Abbey, which is down there, and that's where I'm heading right now, back to where I began this route about 3 hours ago. That's not a bad time, to be honest with you, to get around Selby. And the Abbey, which is there, is where I'll be meeting some of you guys in a short while. But before that, I'm going to head across to the giant Bellflower to find some food. So here we are inside the giant Bellflower, and while I was doing all that, Nikki went shopping, didn't you?
Certainly did. Went off and spent some TVI pounds.
So what have you bought, Mrs?
Okay, so I went into, first of all, Cable's Butchers, and you can't see them because they're in the bags. I'm not taking them out. But in there is a game pie, and in here there is a pork pie, and both of these are actually still warm. And then I went into Thomas the Baker, and we got some chocolate muffins, which will make our pudding this evening, and because Hannah is a big kid, we've got some gingerbread.
Oh, and Hannah also bought this from the Yorkshire Trading Company. I have no idea what this is. Oh, and that's what it does, apparently. Hannah, you are a big kid, end of story. Okay, we're back at the Abbey, and it's now open, and we're going to have a little explore in here before we meet some people. So hope you're ready for this. This is quite an impressive building on the inside. Look at this. Cavernous as well. The Abbey is open to all from 10 AM until 4 PM daily. Inside there's a gift shop and a cafe. The Abbey is designated as a parish church, although the design of the Abbey was loosely based on Durham Cathedral. The Abbey often has displays about various things. This one was only temporary, but it was all about the Selby toll bridge, which featured in the Balby episode. This displayed some of the original toll collectors' uniforms. Seeing as Hannah was with us, we were pretty much guaranteed to light a candle in here. It seems to be her thing in religious buildings. I think the Abbey is best summed up by a line that I found on its very own website that reads, "The Abbey is not just a building, it's a living and vibrant part of the local community, yet provides space that allows the visitor and the worshipper alike to find peace, tranquility, and the very presence of God." Okay, so we found a war memorial on the north wall. Check this out. This is probably one of the
finest examples I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, the most elaborate we've seen in Selby, probably. Isn't this amazing? In fact, this whole building is amazing, and the best thing about it is, I don't really want to offend people from York who might be watching this, but it's free to get in, and York Minster, which is obviously similar to this, charges an absolute fortune.
During our visit to the Abbey, the artist in residence, a lady called Serena Partridge, has made some tiny images of swans and placed them in locations around the Abbey. They are stitched in petty point, and the swans themselves measure a tiny 1 by 1 inch. They're stitched on a high count fabric, far too small for this stitcher's eyes, and they make what is known as a visible mend. Apologies for the image quality, but her Instagram is linked below, so check her out.
Okay, I've left Nikki and Hannah in the Abbey just while I've popped outside to meet some of you folks. Hopefully there'll be a few people show up to celebrate the end of the Selby series. Just before we get into that though, it's time for the last picture bit of the Selby series. Because this is a big one, you're getting double the normal amount of pictures in today's picture bit. Here's 10 of them as opposed to the usual 5. Well, up to now, nobody has turned up. We are on our own, sat outside the Abbey, and there's nobody here. But I can at least show you what those two have been buying from the
Well, not me.
The
It's
Abbey.
been Hannah, actually. I gave her 20 quid, which was my biggest mistake. So
Absolutely.
she's bought a tote bag, which has a message on it that says, "The love of family is life's greatest blessing," which is very true. We have a key ring showing Selby Abbey on it.
Yeah.
And then this, which is a car visor guardian angel.
All right.
And it says, "Don't drink and drive, don't text and drive, don't speed. And remember, even your guardian angel cannot multitask."
I like that. I like that. There's a fair few drivers out there who could do to learn from that one.
From that one, yeah.
Yes, indeed.
And now where's the other stuff?
Hang on, there's more yet.
Yeah, you see, this is the problem when you send the child off with money and you say, my brief to her was get a couple of souvenirs and, you know, maybe like if they've got like a preserve or a jam or something, get a jar.
Yeah, you shouldn't have done that.
Selby Abbey reduced sugar York strawberry jam.
Okay.
So it's actually branded Selby Abbey as well. 66% strawberries in that.
Oh, wow.
So
Plenty of strawberries.
oh yes.
Is there anything else, or is that it?
One more thing.
One more thing.
Okay.
It's like Christmas.
Seville fine cut orange marmalade. So again, the same Selby Abbey branding. I won't eat this because I actually dislike marmalade. But
All of
yeah,
it.
I'm pretty sure that this one will get used as well.
Yeah, it
So,
probably will.
There we go.
Okay. Well, nobody came, so I'm afraid, guys, that's it. There's nothing more to show you or tell you in this episode or in this series. That is it. That's Selby complete. 74 down out of 74. You know what's next, Nikki?
Ooh, go on.
York.
Yes.
York will begin this time next week.
Cool.
I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and that's been Mrs. TVI, or Mrs. Chocolate Box. That's the nickname that you seem to have acquired over these past few episodes. And that's been the District of Selby. I do hope you've enjoyed it. We're out.